The Utah Jazz win. That's not something we've been able to say very often. But the Jazz win in a shorthanded battle where the Jazz were missing 5 of their top 8 guys and the Nuggets were missing 4 of their top 5. It was the Jazz who prevail in a 108-104 win over the Denver Nuggets. We're talking about it coming up on Postcast. David Locke along with Ron Boone with you here on Postcast after each and every Jazz game. Thanks very much for grabbing it and tuning in, whether on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Thanks very much wherever you're getting the program. The Jazz win it tonight, 108-104. Ron, what'd you see?
I saw a very hard-fought basketball game. I saw guys playing very, very hard. You heard Butler talk about guys trusting each other, playing hard, and just trying to make the right plays. And I thought they followed a script that really really worked for them. Only 8 turnovers in the basketball game. I was very impressed with that as well. But it was a fun game to watch, and not only for me, but I think the fans enjoyed it as well.
So when you say fun to listen to or fun to watch, what was it that you enjoyed?
How hard they play. I mean, the hustle plays that they were to make. You hear so many commentators talk about the 50-50 balls, that type of thing. There's something to that, because when those 50-50 balls are there and you go get them, and you're making some things happen. You're challenging the rim. Jazz ended up getting 22 free throws in the ball game. That's about normal. Only 12 for the Denver Nuggets, so they were hustling and playing hard without fouling. It was just a fun basketball game. Why? Your star players wasn't here, for both teams. And so they got a chance to see a different side of this basketball team that worked very well tonight.
Probably the biggest hustle play of the night is Royce O'Neal on Mike Conley steals the ball. So there's the first part of the hustle. Takes it the length of the court. Denver hustles back, gets back. Mike misses the layup. There's a Royce O'Neal. I'll go see the replay. I think vaulted over the back of Zeke Naji. Somehow keeps the ball alive, knocks it away from him, kicks it out to Conley. Conley then finds Rudy Gay for a layup. It was probably the biggest play of the game.
Yeah, like fumble, like in football, just and everybody dives after it. And again, there's one of those hustle plays. And other Jazz players probably could have given up, just assumed that Mike Conley was going to make a layup. But they didn't. They hustled down, and everyone gets involved. I know we've talked about Conley. We've talked about the Butlers and the Trent Forrest and the way they played, but I thought Royce O'Neal did a heck of a job there tonight.
Yeah,
well.
Royce had a bunch of big hustle plays. And a lot of guys did a great job tonight. Rudy Gay did not shoot it great, but he finished with 15 points, I think it was, and 9 rebounds on the night. And the Jazz needed it. He hit a bunch of big shots. That layup we just talked about, a fadeaway, did miss 2 free throws late, did miss a bunch of shots. The fun part of the night was the 3 youngsters. Udoka Azibiuke, Jared Butler, Trent Forrest, Elijah Hughes got some time as well. Did not have as memorable of an experience. Let's start with Trent Forrest, Ron. 18 points tonight, 8 assists. He did have 2 rebounds on the night. He hits his 1-3 he took. He played 38 minutes, which tells you what the coaching staff thinks of him. They gave him a 30-second break at one point, so he didn't go to 40. He was clearly the guy they trusted a huge amount tonight, and made a ton of plays.
And it was obvious that they made sure they told him, you got to make some plays offensively. You have to do something. I mean, because he's never been as aggressive offensively as we saw tonight, driving to the basket. I know he took a couple of long-range jump shots, but his game right now is defense and penetrating and get to the basket. You mentioned how strong he is. He's just under 200 pounds. And strong. And so when he goes to the basket, the defender does feel it.
There's an interesting sequence early in the game where Forrest went to the basket and created space by diving into the defensive player, owning the space and creating his own space. Yeah. The next drive, Jared Butler came down, and Butler tried to avoid the space and missed. But from that moment on, Jared Butler drove to the basket and did a little bit more of what Trent Forrest did. We saw Jared Butler adjust in the middle of a game in a way we have not seen enough of him to know that he could do it. This is a guy who, frankly, is an outside shooter, a pull-up jumper. He didn't have any of that tonight. I think he finished 0 of 5 on threes and 5 of 6 on twos. And Butler found a way with space to get to the basket, had a really nifty crossover, stop, pull back, step through, layup late. But he showed a nice game inside the paint in a game that allowed for it, right? There were no bigs on the floor. It was 5 out. Everyone was playing spread, and Jared Butler took advantage of that.
Now, we've mentioned many times about what these guys can do with a number of minutes, and I make reference to some guys that can make an impact on a ball game in a short period of time, and that's probably what was going to happen. This was at the beginning of the season with some of these guys because of the makeup of this basketball team and the fact that Rudy and Donovan and Boyan and those guys were going to get a certain amount of minutes. So your minutes out there on the floor was only going to be 10, 12, 13, 14 minutes. And sometimes that's only like 3 or 4 minutes at a time. Can you make an impact? So we got a chance to see exactly what these guys can do in a long period of time with a number of minutes out there on the floor.
The guy that fires me up the most on how he played tonight, honestly, is Udoka Azibiuke, because he seemed to be the furthest away from having a good night, and certainly going up against Zeke Njai is a lot. Who's in the same draft class, drafted in a similar spot, is a very different thing than playing most NBA starting centers. But I thought, he held his own tonight in a matchup that's got to give him some confidence, because he has been, quite honestly, really far away from being a viable option. Tonight was a night where he really made a bunch of great plays and helped the Jazz win immensely.
A couple of block shots, and got a chance to spend a lot of time out there on the floor. Been nursing injuries, so he hasn't had those the growing pains or those developmental times where he can become a much better basketball player because of his injuries. He rebounded the basketball very well and held his ground a couple of times to block shots, so it was impressive.
Young guys will take the headlines. I gave him the headlines here. The fact is, Mike Conley, we actually played before the game. We couldn't figure out who was supposed to win. There were so many guys missing.
Pick 'em game.
The Jazz were missing 5 of their top 8, and the Nuggets were missing 4 of their 5. And I literally said to Ron, like, who's like the better team? So we actually drafted. We drafted the players to kind of try to, like, I always think that's a good way to do it. Like, if you were like sitting there starting a game tonight and you had to pick these guys, who are you drafting? And we took Mike Conley first and Bojan Bogdanovic second, and then we kind of stuttered on who was third, and Will Barton got the pick, but then there was hesitation on that, and like, was Royce O'Neal fourth, or was Bones Highland? Like, it fell apart really fast. And I would actually say, Ron, Mike Conley and Bojan Bogdanovic, as much as the headliners are going to get the notes tonight, they were the 2 best players on the floor tonight. That's absolutely why the Jazz won, is that they were the 2 best players on the floor tonight.
And it really showed in that first quarter. I mean, even though the Jazz got outscored in that first quarter by 2, it was still Conley and Bojan who really, you could see the difference in what they were doing for their team out there on the floor.
Bojan does it without a 3 again tonight.
Yeah.
Still another night. I mean, his shooting is just not quite right now, and that finger is so obviously bothering him. There's one level here where Quinn Snyder and Alex Jensen in their various press conferences have gone back to the core, which is just compete. And there was a feeling about this Jazz team that they maybe weren't competing that much earlier in the year. Does this send a message to Donovan and Rudy and, Jordan, I guess, who, he's been competing pretty darn hard recently, in some sense, that when they come back, that the effort level has been upped in the last few games and that they've got to match that?
I think it will or it does. And if you watch a ball game like this and then you go back and watch film on how the team was playing and you realize, okay, that effort that we need to elevate, needs to be there. Can we do it? That type of thing. So you're probably absolutely right there. But with Donovan and Rudy and Jordan Clarkson, they play different. So, and I'm sure that they'll go back to playing that way, but hopefully they'll go back to playing that way with those hustle plays.
Final note on the night, congratulations to Alex Jensen, who will not get credit for this win. Quinn Snyder will get credit for it in the books, but Alex Jensen was the helm. What was interesting to me about watching Alex Jensen coach tonight, there was no blueprint. There was no model by which the Jazz had used these players in this fashion before, because these players had never been used this way. It's got to be a thrill for Alex.
It had to be the substitution patterns that he used. And as you mentioned, Forrest came out of the ball game for 30 seconds and, got to get him back in there, that type of thing. So just making those decisions there on the fly and recognizing situations out there on the floor they probably could take advantage of. I'm not saying that's the case, but I would imagine that goes through your mind as a head coach. But nice job. Now he's 1-1.
Cool night for everyone involved. He's actually 0-0. Officially.
Yeah.
That's right. But have a great one. Thanks very much for tuning into POSTCAST. I'll be back with you tomorrow for Locke.